We're looking at 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter. I'm getting chills just looking at it. The 9th verse. If you're following along on your smartphone, say hold up and I'll wait for you to get there. All right. 1 Peter, 2nd chapter, we're starting at the 9th verse. Anybody else need me to hold on? All right, so let's listen. 1 Peter, 2nd chapter, 9th verse. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood,
Yes.
a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the excellence of God who called you out of darkness into God's marvelous light. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the excellence of God who called you out of darkness into God's marvelous light. I want to preach subject this morning, never been picked, but I'm chosen.
All right.
Look to your neighbor and say, never been picked,
Never been picked,
but I'm chosen.
but I'm chosen.
Never been picked,
Never been picked.
but I'm chosen.
All right.
So there are many of us in this room who identify as LGBTQIA+. Many of us in this room know what it is like to be bullied, to be forgotten, to be ridiculed, to be picked on. And I'm not just talking about in childhood. I'm talking about in adulthood.
Say that.
Many of us know what it is like to be in rooms that we don't feel comfortable, that we think everybody is looking at us, even in spaces that are supposed to be safe. I remember being a child in school, and we would have team captains. And when they had captains, you remember what we would do? You would go down the line, and you would pick people to be on your team. And how many folk remember the anxiety of waiting to be picked to be on somebody's team? I remember there were times that we got excited when our friend was the captain. Because we knew even if we wasn't good, they was going to pick us first. Or at least early on. And you would go back and forth. This person, that person, that person, then this person. And then the worst is when it was an odd number. And you get all the way down to 2 folk left or 3 folk left. And then there was the one who was not picked. Anybody ever not been picked?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody ever been left standing, feeling like you had no place to go, and the excitement of play was quickly overshadowed by a sense of rejection, leaving one to wonder, why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't I worthy enough to be included or to be picked? In those moments, the desire to belong became so palpable that it could ache. Never been picked, but I'm chosen. Picked over, picked apart. You ever thought you were picked by somebody only to be rejected in the end? Have you ever been picked up, then used, manipulated, and dropped? Have you ever been picked around? Everyone around you was picked in the game, at the club, at the camp, at the church, but they wanted your friend. They wanted your sibling. They wanted the one right next to you. Some of us ain't even been picked in our families. Some of us know we're not the favorite child, the favorite grandchild, the favorite niece or nephew or non-binary. Many of us in this room understand what it's like to be picked over. How many of us ever picked around food on our plates? You ever had something, I like this part of it, but then, and And so what that's called is partially picked. Picked-ish. People want part of you, but not everything else. We, the created collective, have been in churches all our lives sometimes that wanted our gifts. They wanted our songs. They wanted us to decorate. They wanted us to play the instrument. They wanted us to give our money. They picked part of us, but then rejected the part they didn't agree with or they didn't like. There have been people that we have relationships with that picked us on certain days for certain activities to do certain things at certain times of night and day. But when it came time for dates and activities elsewhere, outside of intimate spaces, they didn't want to pick us. Had no problem texting us in the middle of the night, but can't meet us for coffee in the middle of the day. One day you realize that they only picked you to play with you, then put you down when they were done with you. Some of us spent or are spending our lives still saying, pick me, by folk who don't even know how to pick themselves. We want to be picked so bad by everybody else, sometimes we don't even pick ourselves. Wasn't the pick of the litter, but I often had to pick my poison. Never had enough hair to have to pick it out, but I have been picked clean. And sometimes I struggle to pick up steam like this morning, but at times folk had no problem trying to pick my brain. Never learned how to pick a lock, but I constantly had to pick up where I left off and pick up somebody else's slack.
Oh, say that.
The reality is that even in all of the pick-me inside of me, I have often struggled to pick myself. And when you are picked, guess what you do pick up? Insecurities, self-esteem issues, feelings of inadequacy, depression, hopelessness, despair. And so instead of picking ourselves in making healthy choices, we pick stuff to numb the pain of not being picked. And if the folk who gave birth to you don't pick you, if your granny, who's supposed to love the grandchildren more than anybody, don't pick you, if the church tells you that God doesn't pick you, if the people you're in school with and learning with and playing with don't pick you, how does that land? How does that sit in your body? What do you do with that? And so we, the unpicked collective, those of us who have never been unpopular, the weird, the timid, the confused, shy, the lonely, some of y'all are like, yeah, Christy, come on. Eventually we find each other. We find each other and we build chosen family. And eventually we come to the point where we don't care who doesn't pick us.
Yeah.
Because we stay around folk who pick us every single day and every single opportunity that they get. And what happens when we get together is we start to heal. Then we finally come to the point, hopefully, that we realize that not being picked was actually our superpower. Because there's something that happens when you are rejected by everybody else. You start to learn how to lean on God. Even if you don't call it God. You start to look for ways to find your awesomeness. And that very chosen family will rally behind you. And the next thing you know, you're not worried about being picked anymore because you've been chosen.
All right. This is good.
make it plain, Dorothy didn't fit in with her family or her community. And so she chased the very preacher that she was most comfortable with and ended up in a storm.
Right.
She destroyed an enemy of the other unpicked folk that she met just by showing up, and didn't even realize that she had the power to destroy that evil. She found some folk on her journey to get back home, and they too had been unpicked. And it's amazing when all the unpicked folk get together and build community and build friendships and build a movement and build something towards God. And through those journeys of confusion and pain and loss and being messed up and being insecure and being unsure as they were, eventually they found that the very thing they had been seeking and looking for was with them all along. They were looking for an external whiz. I'm black, so it's the whiz. Who could save them, only to discover that the very thing they thought they were missing was inside of them all along. Let's make it ONA. Dorothy taught us, children of Dorothy, daughters of Dorothy, that all we need is a pair of sparkly shoes. And we can come out of dark places and into God's marvelous light. Understand that your shoes don't sparkle in the closet. You need light for them to shine. And so sometimes God says, I gave you the glitter, but you're so nervous about shining. You're so afraid of coming into the light that you stay in dark places. And Bishop Plunder reminds us that ain't nothing good in a closet, right? What's in the closet? Darkness and funkiness. And God says, if you just step out.
Step out. Step out.
And let the glitter shine. And what happens when we let our glitter shine, we simultaneously give others the opportunity to let theirs shine as well. We have an obligation as the unpicked collective to find other unpicked folk and go on the journey of unpickedness. And so through the loneliness, the hardship and despair, we find our superpowers, and then we help connect the unpicked people to the God who chose them. Each and every one of us has a story of how one day we had to question whether or not God could use us because of who we are or where we were in life. I remember a time when I didn't think I could be black and Christian and a pastor. There were black folk who said, why do you want to go to the Christian church? Look at what it's done to us. There were gay folk that said, why do you want to go to the Christian church? Look at what it's done to us. There were Christians saying, man, look, man, you black, I want you over here. There were Christians saying, you're gay, I don't want you over here. Never been picked, but God chose me. Yes. And there's something powerful about being chosen. Amen. Because once you are chosen, you don't care who didn't pick you. It is amazing the insecurity that used to exude when I walked into a room, because I was wondering and worried about, do they like me? Will they understand me? Will they get me? And now I don't care, because I've been chosen. And more than anything, I choose myself. And so I wear what makes me comfortable. And so I stand and make up space that makes me comfortable. And so I do what I need to do to feel good about myself when I go to bed at night. And I don't worry about anybody else because I've been chosen. And when folk don't get me, I don't care. And when folk don't like me, I don't care. Sometimes that's the goal, is to see how much of God's love and joy I can exude even when folk are looking at me.
Come on.
Why? Because 2 Thessalonians says, because God hath from the beginning chose you. Why? Because naked I came from my mother's womb. And naked shall I return. God gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Never been picked, but I'm chosen. We have a responsibility to help folks see that God chose them.
Yes. Amen. Yes.
We have a responsibility. We were talking last night at dinner about what a good job the conservative church does in going out and spreading their conservatism and hate. They organize trips in the name of Jesus to tell people they ain't good enough. They organize missionary trips in the states, out of the states. They go to neighborhoods. They combine their resources to preach a God that rejects, dismisses, and condemns. And so the question then, as much as I love our denomination, how bold are we going to be to help folk persist and resist?
Yes.
How many of our resources are we going to use to go find the unpicked that have been pushed to the margins and let them know that God chose them? How much of our energy are we going to use to go stand with the oppressed and marginalized folk of the world? I understand that sometimes our pain and our trauma can make us afraid to go back to those spaces, to go back to that feeling. I could see when I asked the question, how many of us have never been picked? I could see the pain on some of our faces even this morning. But let me tell you something about this type of pain. When you experienced it and experience in the present it, that's not to make you feel bad. That's to motivate you to make sure that you do your part, that the next doesn't have to go through what you went through. And so when I talk to my nieces and I talk to young people, I encourage them to befriend those that struggle to find friendship.
Beautiful.
And I do the same as an adult, but just because we're adults, it's still a struggle. You can look at people and tell when they're uncomfortable. And I love walking up to folk and just shining God's love on them. You never know how your presence will change somebody else's life. And so we, the Never Been Picked Collective, have an obligation to go ye therefore and show God's people that they are chosen. Let's give God a hand clap of praise.